I think it is safe to say that we are all back. Thumbs up, everyone back. Yeah, should we give it 2 minutes? Okay, let's give it a minute and then we can move. Okay, I'm sure that everyone is back by now. So continuing, where we looked at supporting the student, also looking at supporting the student with the resources that are available to help them to read and write up the various stages of their research, whether it's proposal stage, whether it's the literature review methodology, data collection, conclusions, and so on. All right. So it's all about providing them or guiding them on how to use the resources. Then we spoke about time allocation, giving the students timelines so that they don't fall behind because you have a specific time frame in which to finish a qualification, and if you don't set out these deadlines and timelines, then the student is going to fall behind. And then I showed you specific structures that you can use or put in place. Now we're looking at 5.4, which is guiding the writing of arguments. We touched on this and we looked at argumentative writing and guiding the student as a supervisor on how to build arguments. And like I mentioned, we spoke about stating a claim where you're putting in your voice or their voice as a student. So the student's voice, making a statement, and then supporting it with literature to build an argument. So they're debating what other authors have said against their word, what they want to actually do. So it's a role of writing in an argumentative way in each of your chapters. So when we are guiding the students, do you just guide them generically on how to structure these chapters, how to write up these chapters, or do you take them step by step, each chapter, chapter by chapter? How do you guide them on that actual writing process? And then do you teach them how to do sentence construction, right? Not teaching, but supervise them and guide them on sentence construction, paragraph construction, how to have a flow from one sentence to the next sentence, supported by references, how one paragraph flows into the next paragraph, building an argument before you actually come to the conclusion. Zamokushle and then Lindiwe.
Yes, colleagues. So again, for me, I said it's from personal experience because I have not supervised anyone. So, from my experience, what would usually happen is I would be guided chapter by chapter, and I think I've also drawn from that experience where I have a mindset that I'll be uh, reviewing or supervising or supporting the student on a chapter by chapter basis, of course, because of the workload, time, and so on. So I found that much more efficient for academics in the higher education space. But while navigating and going through the chapters of the student, uh, what I found important from my experiences was telling the student that no, this is not how you construct a sentence. this is how your sentence should be, which is some form of guidance. Um, you should have a sentence that signals and signposts to me that you are now moving on to something else, which is part of sentence construction. And then um, each paragraph should focus on an idea. It
Yes.
shouldn't be mixed up, and I shouldn't get lost what you are saying and what you are intending to convey in your research. So those are some of the guidelines that I work along in terms of guiding and supervising students. Thank you so much, Codings.
Thank you so much for that. And I generally tend to do the same thing, something similar in that I would guide the student chapter by chapter. And like you said, I like how you said that each paragraph should be an idea that has been developed. And then that paragraph flows into the next paragraph, taking into the next idea. And where you get these ideas and subheadings would be from the research questions and objectives of the study, because your literature review must be linked to that. Lindiwe and then Mfundo?
Okay, for me in this case, in terms of document, yes, I work with them chapter by chapter. And when they begin with a chapter, I give them again a structure because I'm familiar with qualitative research. Yes, we do Kwan, but I can speak more comfortably on qualitative research. Then if it's chapter one, I give them a structure, and most of us know that chapter one is usually similar in most dissertations, and then maybe the literature might vary slightly depending on the what the student is writing on. But when we move to other chapters, I will give them a specific structure that they can adhere to, and they can they can change the headings and the topics to align with what they are writing on. But what is important for me is to encourage during the writing that the student must critically engage with literature. They can't just again write from the heart. Whatever they write, they need to support with literature in cases where they know that what they are claiming is not general knowledge. So when they are during their thought process, when what they want to write, they know that this is not general knowledge. They need to find out what other people are saying, other scholars are saying, so that they can
Yes.
be able to reference their idea. So I usually scaffold my questions. I think maybe I can put it like that because I would usually ask them, what claim are you making here? If I'm looking at a paragraph, I will ask them, what claim are you making here? What evidence support this? If it's something that
Yes.
I'm querying is not general knowledge and they don't have a reference for that specific. And also I will have to agree with Mfundo in terms of theming your paragraphs before they start writing.
Yes.
You need to have a draft of the plan. On you can't just start writing under a heading. Each heading have a plan of what you are going to write about. Hence, we have a
Yes.
first draft. And also once they've maybe responded to what evidence support whatever they're writing on, they also need to think how it links to their research claim. Yeah, so yeah, I do teach them a couple of things looking at abstracts because an abstract, if it's well written, when they're looking at literature, they will be able to say if this will really be able to support their study or not.
Thank you so much for that. Um, Lindiwe, you in CBE, right?
CBE, no, I'm in medical imaging.
Medical imaging.
Yeah,
Okay, now why I'm thinking about, because you guys are doing, you said mainly qualitative, right? So I was trying to,
yeah,
I'm not strong. I have a very strong quantitative background, like I said, because we do
yeah. I heard
experiments and
when you
lab work
speak.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, now I'm gonna pick your brain. That's why I'm asking where you based,
yeah,
because yeah, I'll
yeah,
see you after this. I want to pick your brain about
yeah.
qualitative kills me. I because I'm not strong in it, I'm still learning. And when students come with qualitative research, it's
Yeah,
so difficult. I'm only starting to unpack it right now. So yeah, we'll
yeah.
talk offline. Mfundo?
Okay.
Thank you, Prof. I think as a supervisor, it's imperative to teach a student and guiding a student on writing argument on each chapter or a research a report chapter. Firstly, it's important that students are not writing for the sake of putting words. And each chapter must be meaningful, and each chapter should be built upon the previous chapter. So that's my take, and that's what I always encourage students, because you find out when you read, especially their skeleton or their first draft, that you're just putting words by words, and there is no chronological order of what they have written. So that's why I always encourage them that make sure that your sentence or a paragraph and the chapter is built upon the previous sentence or a paragraph or a chapter, so that we know, so that we see the logic flow of what you are of what you are writing or you have written, so that your research it makes sense. And I also do what other colleagues have said, like, for example, in terms of writing the introduction, what I've noticed in terms of writing the introduction for the students, they write introduction in such a way that they only define. There's always definitions, 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 but the introduction is not concise, is not comprehensive, and you find out we don't see what other studies have, what other researchers have said about the similar study that the student is conducting. So I always encourage students that look at what other scholars and studies have said about the similar study that you are conducting. And obviously, literature. Literature is one of the challenging chapter that student does. So what I've picked up, especially for the student that I'm currently co-supervising at Masters, there is the topic. I'm not going to mention the topic because the study is still under process. The student took all the definitions and subheading that speaks to the topic, and there is no relevance. So how this concept that you are defining is relevant to the study that you are conducting. And the student, I've been telling them to show what is known already about the study, because we want to know what is already known, and what knowledge that you are bringing, or what gap, show us the gap in the study that you are studying. And I always make sure that I make sure that student give comprehensive summary of what they have, of what they are doing. And also in methodology, I do the same way until their findings. So in a nutshell, it is the matter of guiding the student in terms of what is anticipated per each chapter. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So I think a lot of our practices are similar in that we take it chapter by chapter, right? So you will see that I've highlighted on the screen some common areas, okay, that a writer, which is your student at this point, should look at when they are writing up their argument, okay? Everything that you've all just mentioned, writers respond to what others have said about their topic. This is where you have the reference to support it, right? What other authors have said. The writers state the value of their work and announce the plan for their paper. So this is where Lindy West said, always have a plan and what you're going to put into every paragraph or even in the sentence, because it's what you are putting in that literature, what you are putting into that project that's going to essentially add value to the body of knowledge that already exists. So you're not just duplicating what other authors have done, but there must be something a little new that you are bringing. Um, Writers acknowledge that others might disagree with the position they've taken. So, this is where argumentative writing and debating ideas from other resources, other references, because, like we said, they may not be saying the same thing, but this is where the research gap comes in that they've done a research, it's missing. It may not concur with your research, but your research can actually improve on previous research that have been done because this is a gap. This is something that's missing. Having an authoritative voice, this is writing your own opinions, stating a claim, obviously supporting with references. Writers using academic and discipline specific vocabulary. Um, this is true in that we all are from various disciplines here, and the way in which we write and the vocabulary in which what we use is completely different in our styles of writing. Okay, and then obviously, uh, it's not only the written word, but some people or students would want to, even you as researchers, would use tables and graphs and images to make it more visually representative. Okay, so you will, instead of writing something, you can tabulate it, making it more visually representative so that it explains a bit more on a diagram or a table what you are actually trying to express. It doesn't always have to be a narrative. 5.4.2, some of the strategies that supervisors and students may find useful in writing arguments. And that is why I get you guys to give me your personal experiences on how it is written, because these strategies go into your work plan, your practice that you're going to use for your final assessment. All right. And we've unpacked your strategies earlier on this morning when we were discussing it. Some ways of looking at it. So there's a lot of reading for you guys to also go through when you are planning for your final assessment. Remember, it is your perception of what a supervisor should be doing, and it's how you, as a supervisor, what your practices are, how you are guiding the students, what your strategies are, and how you get the student to completion. 5.5, enabling students to integrate authoritative disciplinary voices in their research writing. And this is where we said textual voice. What is the student actually trying to say? And I used an example on Thursday of one of my master's students who only looked at, she didn't even argue. She didn't put her own thoughts down. She didn't stake a claim. Even when she was doing her problem statement, she didn't really write down what the actual problem was that wanted to be investigated. All she did was say, according to Smith 2025, she showed that a problem existed. But yes, in previous literature it did. But how did she incorporate that into what she was trying to investigate? Her voice didn't come out. Okay, in that discipline, her voice did not come out. So it is the authoritative voice that you are proposing as a student when you are writing. So, how do we navigate and tell our students to write in this way where your own point of view or your voice is put into that research? Because remember, it is the you are investigating. Okay, even though you don't say I, we, my, you always write in the third person, but it must still be the voice of the researcher supported by references. Some examples of how to actually write out wordings that you can use. A lot of people use argues, explain, support, proposed, concur, agree, postulate, explains. These are the type of words that we're using when we are writing in these sentences. And then you state your claim. You say that in the food and beverage industry, there have been notable claims of contamination of the packaging. Okay, so in one case we had, I think it was, no, it wasn't clover. Was it the Clover? So Clover actually had, I'm not sure whether you guys noticed it, those pink and blue bottles. So they, the plastic, right? So they tried to change. So obviously they used some kind of colorant or dye on the packaging. And what happened with the packaging is the ink started seeping in through the milk, okay? And it obviously contaminated it, not making it safe to drink, right? So this was an issue. So this is a problem that we've identified. Now, stating that claim and saying that this is the problem, right? And then supporting it with what other researchers have done to say that okay, various other packaging has been used, and previous studies would make it more conducive so that it prevents this problem from occurring. Now this supports my claim, which is I found this problem. Here's an idea that came from another author that said similar problem existed, but this is how they changed the type of material and packaging that they use so that it didn't occur and it didn't that ink or whatever seeped in through the into the milk could be hazardous. Okay, so already I put my voice in, then I voiced my opinion, and this is the problem that was there, and then I supported it by literature, and I said as supported by, and then I gave the reference. So it's always putting an authoritative voice, your voice, into it first, stating your claim, and then saying as supported by someone or proclaimed, concurred, etc. Right? So this gives you a nice idea on your writing style when you are guiding your students. A lot of them, I think you'll notice, those of you that are supervising, especially the honors students, always start with according to. And everywhere it's according to, because we're not really guiding them on the type of sentence construction. Yes, you can say according to, but there's only so many times you can say according to in a paragraph or in an entire chapter. All right? It doesn't show that you're very confident in your writing, that the student is very confident in the way they write, because all they parroting is according to this author and then they state, according to this author and then they state. So it's not really building a solid argument. 5.6, assisting students to understand the voice in writing as a contested concept and to decide how they want to sound in their research writing. It's much like what Lindiwe and Fundo had said, putting in the voice and how you write, how you structure each sentence, each paragraph. So, um, again, we come to the language in that our students don't know how to structure proper sentences in English because they are second language writers. Because English is now a second language to them, it's not a first language. Are we navigating better ways of them to write? So when we are guiding, we've kind of also editing for them in the process. So when we're giving them the comments, I find myself actually editing and writing and saying that this word is improper English, or this word doesn't fit in here, or this sentence needs to be reconstructed in a better way. So these are the ways in which to comment, to show them how to write better, and also guide them on each way in which they can write to get their voice across. So again, we come back to the language barrier and how that language barrier actually affects the way the students can write. Okay, reflection on the overall writing. Anyone? Reflection on the overall writing of your students. How do you feel your students write? Or are you guiding them every step of the way because you feel like you need to teach them how to write better? Do better sentence construction, do better um, paragraph construction. Anyone? How do your students write? Are you happy with the way that your students are putting down their thoughts? Or do you find yourself putting in more effort just to get them to that point of academic writing? I struggle a lot with the technical aspect of the writing. I'm not seeing any hand. Okay, Lindiwe?
I think for me at master's level, as I've mentioned before, We have two groups. We've got those that fall into the reading course. So we have some students that want to register for their masters, but they only have what we previously know as the BTech. So at the present
Yes.
moment, only students that have the new qualification can register straight into the master's program. But those that come back, it's that group of students like your um, old students, like their alumni from back in the days, and they just decided to come back and study. And they almost always struggle with research, even selecting they don't know why they want to do qualitative or quantitative,
Yes.
selecting their population. So I really struggle with those students. But so far with PhD students, I think it's good. You can see that they do have some knowledge of how research needs to be conducted. I'm not really struggling there. But masters, yeah, it differs with the different groups.
No, definitely, I agree with that. Because I also find it, like you said, it's not just them being that novice at the honor stage, master's level as well, especially coming back after so many years to complete a qualification or get a qualification at a postgraduate level. It's I find it also very difficult, and then it kind of feels like you're giving them an English lesson, right? But unfortunately, and I wouldn't say unfortunately, but it's these are things that we need to do to guide the student. I mean, if not personally ourselves, but give them the resources available. Like we said, UJ has the writing center and so on. So everything that's going to assist them to enhance their style of writing and get them through this academic journey. Mfundo?
Prof, rating an assignment, not just any research paper written by a postgrad student, reading an assignment for an undergrad, starting from the undergrad, it's not a child's play, it's a trauma. And it's a trauma on its own. You even ponder or ask yourself questions and you don't find answers in terms of whether the students are reading or not reading. Because I believe my lecturer special as in the communication, we were told that for us to be the good writers of press statement, media statement, news article, we need to familiarize ourselves with reading. And we read a lot of newspaper. And ever since I started lecturing, that's the model that I've been using, especially for writing for communication, writing for traditional and digital media. I'll force or coerce my student to read newspaper. I always bring newspaper in the classroom so that students familiarize themselves with reading and writing so that they can see the style of other authors, of other
Yes.
journalists, because telling the student that use 5 Ws and 1 H when you're constructing your introduction in an article, for example, for
Yeah.
journalism, then the student will not understand it, especially those who are kinesthetic learners who read by doing and who are observant as well. So I believe that that's the decision that I took. That okay, let me give them the newspaper after I taught that section, allow them to go through the article and find these 5 Ws and 1 H and see how quotations are being done when you're writing an article and how quotations are done when you are
Yes.
quoting academically, because those are the two distinct um, different writings. Yeah, so it's difficult and it is challenging for postgrad. I always encourage, especially those who are in honors level, because their intention is to pursue masters in the following year. That at least go to the writing center. The writing center, it is going to improve your writing
Yes.
because you go through with that person whatever text you have written, then you can rephrase it. They can correct it in such a way that you comprehend what should be done and what are the mistakes that you have done. I always encourage them, take a note of the errors that you have made and take a note of what has been amended in that document by the research writing department or by me as the supervisor. And
Yes.
I've seen a greatest improvement when it comes to writing. And I always encourage students to also make use of um, editing. Find an editor
Yes.
and don't just find any editor, a person who calls or claims to be an editor. Find someone who is uh, an editor for academic work because that person knows how to structure the sentence, the person knows the vocabulary that is being utilized, or the verb, or whatever that is needed in terms of academic literacy. So yeah, that those are the things that I always encourage for students so that it becomes easier for the examiners, not just me as the supervisor, so that it becomes easier for the examiners as well to read and comprehend the research report because as supervisors, we shouldn't be the editors of our students. Yes, we need to guide them. We need to show them that, okay, we are proofreading whatever that you have written. So these are the corrections, but I am not going to be the editor of the work. You are the writer. You are proofreading. You are the proofreader. You are the editor of the document that you have written. And also, take it to someone for the double blind eye so that that person can give you the corrections. You can see where you went wrong because it's a learning on its own. The editor is not just editing your work for the sake of you take the copy, the edited copy, and you submit as it is. Then you take the edited copy in contrast with the work that you have written. You do the comparison, then you see what you did and what has been done by the editor so that you can see where you went wrong and where you need to improve. So those are the area that I believe that our student in the postgrad should know. Yeah, those are the things that I've been doing because I every time I finish marking my research essays for my student or research report for my student, I always feel I can be admitted to hospital. Thank you.
I feel your pain because I'm currently, when we finish off today, I've got assignments that I am marking. I started yesterday. I was at a conference and I was marking at the conference. And yeah, sometimes when you see what they've written, it's like you want to pull your hair out, but and you know that you've already showed them how to do it. You've showed them, and it's like much like how I unpack it with you guys. I go through detail what you're supposed to do in the assignment. This is how you answer it. This is how you put your voice in. And yeah, but what you get out of it is completely different, but that's another story. I like the fact that you said you let them read newspaper articles and current work. A lot of us do not guide. I wouldn't say a lot of us, but we don't have that practice in that we take current literature, like we take from newspaper articles, magazines, and so on, forgetting that there's not only, yes, it may not be like officially peer reviewed, but the referencing styles now allows for websites, blogs, newspapers, magazines, etc., because it's current stuff that is not in peer reviewed articles, your journals, your book chapters, your conference proceedings, and so on. So you are allowed to use other forms of media to give you current work so long as you reference it correctly. And now it's given us, Harvard actually gives you ways in which to reference a blog, reference a website, reference a newspaper, and so on, right? The, these are the things, and you get a lot of stuff from the newspapers about what companies are doing. And this could be linked to, like the Business Times and so on. This could be linked to the research that you are doing, um, and you link it. Okay, here's a current affairs article that's there, and link it to what research you are doing. So that, again, how much of that do we guide our students on the types of media to use? We know that our institutions are very heavily reliant on, or very stringent on, peer reviewed articles, but again, times are changing and we need current articles. So we always say, how is your study relevant? This is how my study is relevant because it was in the news. One student, even, I mean, a lot of students, when it was COVID, did a lot of research on COVID. Okay, there wasn't peer review articles to support that, but there was articles in the media that you could have used, current affairs. So these are the things that we are guiding our students on. Where they get the information from and how they use the information. Also, one of the things that we unpacked is choosing and using visual representation. There's a lot of students that like to, so it's a balance of your thesis, like I said, or report or dissertation, where it's not only a narrative, it's not only writing, 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 but there's some kind of visualization in visual representation with charts and diagrams and tables. It's got a bit of more aesthetic appeal and it's colorful. So having that balance between the diagrams and the writing. But what students fail to do is, and when my students they'll put in all these nice pictures that they've generated. Some are even AI generated. You can't just put it in if it doesn't speak to your actual work. Like, for example, you're writing a literature review, and I'm in quality, so we're looking at total quality principles. There's 7 principles. Pictorially, you can represent it. You can show me what these 7 principles are in a flow chart. Looks very nice, looks very colorful, but obviously you need to explain what is in that diagram. Okay, so assuming somebody, and like Mfundo also mentioned, you're writing for an examiner. All right, so when you are supervising your students, also put yourselves in the shoes of being an examiner. You know the type of examiners you are choosing for your students. You know their style of marking because you've seen their reports when they come back, the examiner reports when they come back. So that the next student you're producing, you enhancing your skills. Okay, if I use this examiner again, this is their style. Groom the student into that writing and editing and so on. You have editors that are so good in there, and you get editors that are specific to that discipline, right? Don't get editors just for the sake of getting editors. Always look, it must be discipline specific, even your examiners. Because an editor, and we use an editor that she's now based in Dubai, she actually converts, she looks at even the concepts that you're writing. So it's not just grammatical errors that she's looking at, or spelling errors that she's looking at. She goes into the actual technical work because she's a subject expert and an editor. She looks at the content, and she can, or they can make the work look really good or read really well. Okay, it enhances your work as well by getting the right editors. So visually representing the work, don't just put in charts and diagrams if it's not speaking directly to the work that you're actually representing. And obviously every diagram that you put in, or every table that you put in, you have to have a little narrative to explain what is it that we are representing in those tables and diagrams. All right, so like we said, it's nice to make everything look very pretty. And so we also look at what the front cover looks like, back covers. Oh, your annexures, what annexures you're putting in, because a lot of students put in pictures and so on, and not really saying anything. So don't really put in stuff that's not related, and just so that you make the number. Okay, also when you're putting in things, right, be careful. Look at this picture that's in front of you. Be careful of when, especially now with the POPIA Act, you can't put in people's faces if you are looking at uh putting in pictures. So be very careful as to what you share and what you put into your diagrams, especially if you're using photography. I've had a student do a research where it was a comparative study, a before and after study. So they were doing housekeeping, okay? Um, and we were looking at spillages and stuff and how cords were just left. So we're looking at the safety aspect and how these things can be neatened. So we took out photos that were before and after of how haphazard it was, how untidy. There was a spillage of chemicals, and then after the cleanup, we took out photos as well. Again, ethics, we had to get clearance. We got clearance both from the company and from the university, right? So we covered ourselves both ways. Now, the people that are working in that organization needed to step aside so that when you're taking the photos, we only took the photos of the facility and not the people in the facility. So they needed to be clearly out of the frame. So you're not showing people's faces and so on. With minors, it's a problem because under 18, you need permission from, especially if you're doing workshops or conducting something at schools, you have to get permission from the parents because they are under 18. They're considered minors. You cannot take out photographs. Be careful of also what visual representation is being put into, and like I said, it's things we have to supervise our students on, because even these days on your status, when you're taking out photos, you're posting on your status, you're posting on Facebook, your social media, do you ask people permission to put photos of their children or to put photos of your friends, even if they're over 18? Have we ever asked? And it's something I've learned. You don't just post somebody's child who's a minor and stuff like that. You can't. I mean, the social media is open to, and we know that there are predators online, and you are exposing your child or somebody else's child. This is just, by the way, something for you to think about. Don't just go willy-nilly posting stuff about kids, your kids, other kids, especially minors. We've got to be very careful to protect our kids. Okay, adults as well. If you are going out with a friend, you're having drinks, you're partying and stuff like that, be careful of what you post. Also, remember with the AI, and it can detect what you are doing on your phone. They can track to where you are in that party, your location. We put a lot of stuff. I'm not so much on social media. People put a lot of stuff as location. They went to their physical location. They at this restaurant at that time. Somebody could be looking at what you are putting on your Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and they can show up there. Please be mindful, be careful on the type of things that you put out there. Also, if you're using these pictures for research purposes, you got to obtain the proper permission. You can't just use it out of that. Fundo, it's essential for students to understand that they are writing for an audience. Theses will be cited as well. Yes, it's various different audiences that you are writing for. Okay, but also don't give them too much. Like you're writing for an examiner who expects this, you're writing for me who expects this. So it gives them too much of expectations and too much of work to do. Have a specific style, try and get it a bit more standardized. All right. Okay, so that takes us with images. The type of images that you use also must be very clear. This is one of the things that came out from our examiners, was that students were just copying and pasting pictures. Again, you can't just do that. I know you're citing it, but try and redraw it and then cite it at the bottom saying as sourced or sourced from, and then put the reference, right? That is how you're supposed to teach your students to reference these diagrams, and then you're explaining what is there. It's better to redraw it, because when you just copy and paste, it's very distorted sometimes. The writing or the labeling is very unclear. So be careful as to how you generate as well. Okay, it must be you must be able to read the images. Let's see what is happening in the images. 5.8 is coming to the conclusion, which is writing a strong conclusion. What does a conclusion entail? Right? A conclusion is basically an overall summary of everything that you have done from your chapter 1 right up until your chapter 4, which is your results and findings. So you're now summarizing everything in that conclusion chapter. And how do you write a good, strong conclusion? You have to look at, you can go from various examples of what other authors have done. It's not about repeating what has been done previously in other studies. It is concluding on the results and findings that you have, linking it to literature to say that everything is supported. Your literature supports your findings. Um, the findings supported your objectives and your research questions, and that is how you build a strong conclusion. Everything needs to be linked, which then takes us to writing your abstract. What is the abstract? If the conclusion is a summary of the entire dissertation or thesis, what does abstract entail? Anyone? What does the abstract include? And I've had students ask me this, what is different from an abstract and a conclusion? Anyone? No one wants to take a chance? Anyone?
I can try.
Mfundo? Oh, sorry. Okay, Karen and then Mfundo.
So I think an abstract is, I want to say it's a kind of a summary, but it's something that stands alone. So it'll detail the what are the objectives of the study. It'll give a brief idea of the research methodology that was followed, the sample or the cohort that was used, and then a summary of the findings. So if you're starting kind of an article, you'd include, or the thesis, you'd include the abstract up front, and that would give the reader a quick idea of what the larger document contained, and would allow them then to decide if they wanted to read it in more detail.
Yes, it paints the picture of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Your conclusion is already happened. You're finalizing.
Yeah.
Fundo? Thank you, Karen.
I think I was going to say what Karen has said, but I'm going to say an abstract. It is that concise summary of a research paper, article, or dissertation, and it includes the following: the purpose or objectives of the study, the methods, how the research was carried out, and what approaches and techniques that were used in the research. Then you draw your results and your findings, just summarize what did the research reveal or discover. Then you draw up your conclusion. And it's usually 200 to 300 words. And
Yes.
in an abstract, you need to also indicate the keywords of the study as well that you have used throughout. Yeah.
To highlight, yes, those main keywords, right? So you have an idea of what an abstract is. Now, how do you guide your students when you are supervising? It's all about us understanding what it is first so that we can actually guide the students or teach the students on how to actually do it. So, an abstract, much like we said, entails I just want to unpack this for you. Where's my notes? Okay. Aspects of the abstract, which I take my students through once they're done. Um, we always say it's one of the final stages that you have to do. It's the last thing that you do, even though it's the first thing that you see in a dissertation or thesis, right? So these are the things that go into the abstract, and we don't give a very lengthy explanation about literature, right? Because even when you are writing an abstract for a publication, and you would guide your students on that as well, brief introduction and background to the study, like we said, purpose and objectives or research questions, briefly what the methodology is about, because like Mfundo said, you can't go more than 200 to 300 words on an abstract, right? What are the results and findings, which is very important, and then a little conclusion as to what we found or how was it linked to your objectives. Now, in your workbook, you have an example, and let's see whether this example has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me go to sharing. Here's an abstract that's been given to you in your content guide on page 99. Excuse me. Now, looking at those 5 aspects that you're supposed to have, right? So this is an abstract that was developed. I hope you all can see it and it's not too small. Let's look at it, right? Read it. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Tell me whether it's unpacked any of those are the 5 common things that you should have in an abstract. Now tell me whether this abstract that you have in front of you, I'm going to give you a few minutes to read it and then unpack it. Tell me whether it has those 5 elements. All right? I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to do that. I'm going to give you 1 more minute, or do you need more time to read this?
A little bit more time.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure why this thing jumped. I'll put it back on the screen for you. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so have page 99 open, right? Now, you tell me, we unpacking? Does this abstract include the key element of the introduction or background? It provides a brief context of the research. What is the overall topic? Why is it important? Identifying existing knowledge gaps that the research aims to address. Does it have that? Anyone? Does it give you a brief introduction and background to the study? The topic is on the top, right at the top. Has it done that?
A comment from me. I think it's a bit
Yes.
weak, the introduction. It does say there appears to be very little research, but I think it just launches straight into it. I feel like it could have had a better introduction.
building a better
Yeah.
introduction, opening, let's say
Yeah.
opening statement,
Yeah.
right? That's also what I found when I read this. Anyone else pick that up? It's not a very strong opening sentence, the way it starts. You can
Yeah.
critique this abstract, right? Anyone else? The first
Um,
element of introduction.
you
Yes,
can
Mfundo?
you can critique the abstract because when I read the introduction, for example,
Yes.
it does not have the opening statement in terms of teacher what I forgot what it was all about, but what I remember, I think the author just identified the existing knowledge gap. There should be this and this and this and this. I think explained that instead of giving us a little background in the opening statement.
Okay, so it could have been written a bit better, right? That's what I'm getting from you guys. Does it have the purpose? Does it explain the purpose or objective of this research? Did it explain that?
I think the second paragraph,
There we
it
go.
attempted to explain the objectives. Yes,
It gave us some idea, okay?
yes.
Which is not bad. Yes, a lot of improvements. As you read, you can see that there are improvements that can be made, but the gist of it is there. Okay, so purpose, objectives, it is stated a bit there. Everyone in agreement?
And
Yeah.
also the author gave us the Vygotsky theory, my favorite theory. Also gave us the theory that was used in the study, which is very essential, that it should be also demonstrated or it should be indicated in the abstract.
Yes, the methodology and approach that was used. Okay,
Mm.
Lindy, where?
Yeah, and maybe just that on top of what Mfundo has mentioned, theory, I feel it's theory heavy. If you are a reviewer or it lands on your desktop, it will be very, because it will be like you are now reading about the main study. It doesn't immediate. It's not even catchy. You need to really intensively read and consider this abstract. I don't think it's immediately accessible to readers. So that was my main concern before I can even consider any of the things that the colleagues have mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's what we're doing. We're dissecting it because you as supervisors now, you reading this abstract, you are able to pick out what makes it stronger, what's the weaknesses, what we can improve on, whether these elements even exist. Teboho, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Prof. I also wanted to say that it is readable, but I feel as well that some of the information were,
Improvement.
yes, even the findings. If the findings, you do have some major findings, you can maybe highlight the actual findings. Those findings that stood out, just so that the discussion, it makes things clearer if you have the actual findings as well.
So you see how important it is for an abstract and the way in which it is written. Yes, we know that it has to be 200 to 300 words, but for a well, that's for manuscript, but for a dissertation, it can be 500, up to 500 words, right? So it is very important how a student is guided on the structuring of the abstract, because you're building a story. It's giving us that path of what we're going to look for or look forward to when we read the remainder of that dissertation. Okay, so it's very important to unpack that. Yes, there's a lot of improvements that can be made, and I'm glad that y'all are picking this out, because it's showing now that y'all, as supervisors and as examiners at some point, or currently examiners, this is what you would pick out if you were to be an examiner as well. Does it reflect some kind of methodology that is used? Okay, as Mfundo has also mentioned, it was in the second, third, and fourth paragraph. It paints a picture of what the methodology is. The paragraph 5 shows us results and findings, which Lindy West said could have been a bit stronger in the way it was written. And then the last paragraph gives us what the conclusion is. So, yes, it has all the elements, but the elements can be made a bit stronger. They can build a better argument in writing this abstract. All right. Everyone good with that? How to unpack your abstract, how to guide your students on writing the abstract. Okay. And then we come to the overall presentation, preparing and presenting the research report from start to finish. How the assessment, do you take the student through the assessment process? Much like that guideline that I had, which I showed you, the PowerPoint is um, taking the student right up to when they submit for exams, how to present their work. And this is shown in, let me share my screen again, 5.10, how the student now presents the whole final report, okay? In terms of visualization, how it's going to be assessed, how it's presented, how the information is organized, how the chapters are all structured, how your paragraphs within the chapters are all structured, okay? Headings, subheadings, tables, figures, diagrams, photography, every single stage and how it is put in, how the reference list is done in terms of the various reference style that is used by your specific institution, department, school, faculty, etc. um, Teaching them how to do those references where it's a reference list at the end and also in text referencing. We spoke about language editing and how important it is. It's not the responsibility of the supervisor, but the supervisor, we as supervisors, we tend to edit along the way. As we're reading our students' work, we tend to edit. Like with myself, I'll put in comments about English, restructuring sentences, and so on. I'll even restructure it for the student. Okay. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion and the end of Unit 5. Any questions before I move on to what your assignment is? And then when I see you on Thursday, we're going to go full into your final assessment. Final questions and comments before we look at assignment 5. Anyone? Nothing? All good? Can we move on? So unpacking assignment 5 is in 2 parts. For part 1 of assignment 5, you are required to try out one of the suggestions made by Kemmler and Thompson, or Lamberti and Wenzel, which is in your unit 1 to unit 5 with regard to the voice in academic writing. Okay, section 5.5 and 5.6. This is the voice of the student when you are writing. So even if you are a student and a researcher, it's how you put your voice stating your claim in that research writing. Then write a short reflective account of 500 words of the actual or potential usefulness to research writers. If you are not currently supervising students, then reflect critically on one of the suggestions in relation to your own research writing or voice. All right, still 500 words. So, if you are a supervisor, tell us how useful is it when you tell your students to write in their own voice, or if you are not supervising at this point. I think Samakushle, you said you are not supervising at this point, but you are learning to supervise. But you as a student can also explain about how you were supervised and were you told about writing in your own voice first before we supported with references. B, the reflective account will be assessed in terms of evidence understanding of the suggestion that you have chosen and of the critical reflection on its value. So the reflection on your own practices for 10 marks. Part 2 of the assignment, you may choose to analyze Kemp's sample abstract, which is in 5.9, or thesis abstract from your own discipline. This is why I took you through that exercise. okay, of looking at that sample abstract, and then you gave your comment. So you've already answered part 2. You can choose to present your analysis in the form of annotations on the abstract or in a short report, or to do both. So you unpack it into the elements that needed to be there, what needs to be improved. Like we said, it didn't have a very strong opening sentence or opening paragraph. The methodology or the findings could have been much stronger, those kind of things that we were unpacking. Okay, everything that we looked at in that abstract. Alternatively, you can take an abstract from a student, just that abstract. We don't want the student's details, please. An abstract that you've come across from your own student's work, or even a paper that you have written. Unpack it and see, did it meet this criteria? Do we have those elements that are supposed to be crucial when writing an abstract? And then your response will be assessed in terms of your use of Thompson's advice and your own experiences in abstract writing, and how you support your students in abstract writing. And that is for 5 marks, giving you a total of 15 marks, with a rubric allocated to show you where to get the most marks. All right? Any questions up until this point? So I've already done that exercise with you for part 2, so you kind of know how to unpack an abstract and you know what to look for in an abstract. Anything? Why so quiet? And brings us to the end of this module. And when I see you on Thursday, I think it's Thursday, 4th, right? Yeah. Then we're going to look into detail on the final assessment, what is expected of you for the final report, written report, and how to do the presentation. Okay? Any questions?
Yeah,
Any
just one.
comments? Yes?
One from me. I'm not seeing on Moodle your slides or any of the documents you've got that you kindly said you would share. Are they up there? Is it just me, or when will they
No,
be
no, no, I
loaded? Oh,
haven't.
you
Sorry,
haven't?
I
Okay.
had an issue with my laptop for a while. So accessing Moodle, that is why I've also had an issue with accessing the videos to upload.
Okay, so it's the videos
So yeah,
and the PowerPoints.
yeah, I'm going to put everything. So by next week, you will have everything. Just give,
Okay,
yeah, I
thank you.
just had some issues with Moodle and my laptop. Sorry, guys. I know I owe you all a lot of stuff, but um, yeah,
Okay,
it's just been
no
a bit
problem.
difficult to upload from my side.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments, parting words before we close for today? I hope this module has given you a lot of insight. I hope that all the other modules have given you a lot of insights onto, like I said, before I even started teaching this, I learned a lot when I got into this module specifically, on how to deal with your students. I mean, we took a lot for granted. I assumed a lot that no, students were well equipped, they knew. No, you had to still guide them, take them by the hand through this entire journey. Even sometimes the PhD students that get lost, you still have to take them by the hand. But that is the duty of the supervisor. Some of us go over and above, some of us let them just swim, drop them in the deep end and let them swim. I mean, there's various different ways of doing it, but the students eventually get there. Mfundo and then Lindiwe.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, my question is based on the assignment submission slots. I see the assignment submission slot, and when I click on it, it takes me to assessment where there is Turnitin, assignment
Yes.
1 and assignment 2. So as I was wondering if we only put it on Turnitin and we don't put it on the submission slot, just like other modules.
No, so you do it. It's the Turnitin is the submission. So all you have to do is just upload your document, whether it's a Word document or PDF document. That is your submission. The Turnitin is just to show us the plagiarism, or because remember, these are reflective assignments.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yes, you can use references to support your reflective teachings and practices and so on, but it's just the Turnitin just gives me a report. Don't stress about it. Just do your submission on the link.
Oh,
It
okay.
still
And
comes to
there's
me. It
no
still
link
comes to me
for
directly.
three. 3 and
No,
4 and 5.
I'm still setting up the links for that because I'm having a
Okay, no
problem with
problem.
my
Thank you so
computer. Yeah,
much.
that's why I haven't, like I mentioned to Karen, I haven't uploaded a lot of stuff because my computer seems to be failing me.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Lindy, where?
Okay, I just wanted to say, just to commend you on how all the sessions were conducted in terms of sharing the content guide during the lessons, because we tend to get lost and have to contact each other. What did we cover? Did we cover this? Are we there? Are we? I think that was well done. And I enjoyed also the discussions that we also had during the sessions. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. We try to do our best so that students understand, but thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so with that being said, thank you so much for that, Lindy. I will see you on Thursday. Have a good weekend and all the best with your assessments, your assignments. All right?
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Take
you.
care, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh, bye.